Welcome back, Pop Culture Detectives. Today, we dive into a visual phenomenon breaking the very laws of human biology. Have you ever wondered what happens when the cameras die down, the luxury makeup wipes off, and heavy exhaustion kicks in? What if the biggest boy band on the planet actually looks undeniably better when skipping a shower? Can sheer genetics truly survive intense sweat, sleep deprivation, and absolutely zero grooming? Prepare your hearts and hold your breath to expose the raw, unfiltered truth of these 7 global icons. Let's uncover our exclusive countdown. 7 proofs BTS members are God-level handsome, even when skipping showers. Number 7. RM, the rugged genius sweating raw charisma, unleashed. Imagine the leader of the biggest musical act in history. The man who stood at the podium of the United Nations delivering a flawless speech in a tailored suit, completely stripped of that polished veneer, leaving only the raw, unadulterated essence of Kim Namjoon. When we talk about skipping showers and still looking like a mythological deity, RM is the absolute blueprint of rugged, untamed masculinity that hits you like a freight train of pure charisma. Picture this. It is the middle of the grueling shooting of In the SOP, or deep in the chaotic travels of Bon Voyage, where the luxury of a meticulously planned morning routine is thrown completely out the window. Namjoon wakes up, his hair sticking up in gravity-defying directions, eyes heavy with the kind of sleep deprivation that comes from producing chart-topping hits until 4 a.m. He doesn't immediately rush to the shower to wash away the exhaustion. Instead, he embraces the morning dew with a face completely devoid of BB cream, letting the world see the real, unedited texture of his skin. Have you ever noticed how a lack of grooming somehow amplifies his commanding aura rather than diminishing it? It is as if the sweat from a vigorous morning workout or a long hike up a mountain, classic Namjooning activities, acts as a natural highlighter, emphasizing the sharp, masculine angles of his jawline and the intense depth of his dragon-like monolith eyes. Let us dive deep into the legendary bulk-up era, a cultural reset for the ARMY fandom, where Namjoon transformed his physique through relentless gym sessions. The footage of him pumping iron, his t-shirt clinging to his broad shoulders, drenched in sweat and visibly unwashed, sent absolute shockwaves across the internet. Why? Because it shatters the illusion of the pristine, untouchable idol and introduces us to a grounded, fiercely real human being whose physical power is matching his towering intellect. There is an undeniable psychological appeal here. When you strip away the styling, the designer clothes, and the perfectly set hair, you are left with a man who is incredibly comfortable in his own skin, exuding a quiet, devastating confidence that cannot be manufactured in a makeup chair. Look closely at his bare face in those raw documentary moments. You can see the faint shadows of exhaustion under his eyes, the slight stubble forming on his chin, the disheveled locks falling carelessly over his forehead. And yet, when those legendary, deep dimples appear as he smiles at a passing crab or a beautiful piece of nature, the contrast is nothing short of lethal. It is a cinematic masterpiece of human biology. We are witnessing a man whose attractiveness isn't reliant on soap and water, but on a deeply rooted, intellectual charisma that bleeds through his pores. Think about the sheer audacity of looking this phenomenal when you haven't seen a bar of soap in 24 hours. While mere mortals look like absolute disasters after a long-haul flight or a sweaty outdoor adventure, Kim Namjoon emerges from the wilderness looking like a lead actor in a gritty, high-stakes action thriller. Facts do not lie. His towering height of 181 centimeters, combined with those famously broad shoulders and incredibly thick, powerful thighs, creates a silhouette that demands immediate respect and attention, entirely independent of his hygiene status. The science of attraction often points to symmetry and natural pheromones. And in Namjoon's case, his unwashed, natural state seems to project an alpha energy that is deeply primal and deeply intoxicating. How many people can pull off bedhead that looks like a high-fashion editorial choice? When he loses his passport or breaks another pair of sunglasses with his god of destruction hands, The sheer frustration mixed with his messy, unkempt state only makes him more incredibly endearing and fiercely attractive. This isn't just about looking good. It is about the emotional connection viewers feel when they see the vulnerable, unfiltered side of a global superstar. The sweat on his brow becomes a testament to his hard work, the messiness of his hair a symbol of his creative chaos, and his unwashed skin a canvas displaying the real, breathing man behind the BTS monument. It makes you wonder, does the styling team actually suppress his ultimate visual power? Because when Kim Namjoon is left to his own devices, skipping showers, wearing oversized, wrinkled clothes, and just existing in his pure, unadulterated, messy glory, he ascends to a level of God-level handsome that polished idols can only dream of achieving. It is an unapologetic, rugged beauty that challenges our very perception of celebrity perfection. Have you ever truly pondered the paradox of fame and grime? Let's rewind to those intense recording studio vlogs where Namjoon is trapped in a creative bubble for days on end. The empty coffee cups are piling up, the lighting is harsh, and personal hygiene has taken a complete back seat to the pursuit of musical perfection. In these incredibly raw, unguarded moments, the camera catches him rubbing his tired face, smudging the natural oils across his forehead, and yet the visual output is inexplicably mesmerizing. His golden tan skin, totally free from the artificial whitening filters often used in K-pop, glows with a rugged vitality that tells a story of relentless passion. This isn't just about superficial attractiveness. It is a profound lesson in how authentic dedication transforms a person's aura. We're talking about a man whose brain operates on a genius-level IQ of 148, constantly churning out profound lyrics and philosophical concepts. And somehow, that immense brain power physically manifests as a magnetic force, even when he looks like he just survived a week-long trek through the Amazon rainforest. Fans have meticulously documented these feral RM moments. The infamous V Live broadcasts where he shows up fresh from a bike ride, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat, panting slightly, wearing a simple, sweat-stained gray t-shirt. The internet literally breaks. Why does a sweaty gray t-shirt on an unwashed Namjoon cause more global hysteria than $1 million designer tuxedo? Because it bridges the gap between the untouchable idol and the attainable fantasy. It gives us a glimpse into the intimate, off-duty life of a superstar, proving that true, God-level beauty is completely independent of styling budgets. It's the slight sheen of sweat on his collarbone, the unruly strands of hair that refuse to be tamed, and the deep, raspy resonance of his morning voice before he's had a chance to clear his throat or drink a glass of water. When you combine that gravelly, sleepy voice with a face that looks beautifully exhausted and utterly unbothered by societal standards of cleanliness, you get a concoction of pure, concentrated allure that is scientifically impossible to ignore. He makes the act of neglecting a shower look like a deliberate, avant-garde artistic statement. So, the next time you feel self-conscious about your messy bedhead or post-workout grime, just remember that Kim Namjoon, the leader of the 21st century's biggest pop phenomenon, weaponized that exact look to capture millions of hearts worldwide. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that real God-level aesthetics are born in the sweat, the dirt, and the raw exhaustion of living life to the absolute fullest, leaving us utterly powerless against his unwashed, undeniable charm. Are you ready to see how the other members handle the no shower challenge? And can they possibly top this raw display of leadership visuals? Because if the leader sets the bar this impossibly high with just his morning breath and bedhead, you better brace yourself for the devastation that is coming up next on this list. Number 6. Suga, the Taegu bad boy emitting dangerously pale allure unfiltered. Have you ever stopped to consider the sheer, terrifying power of a man who willingly locks himself away from the sun, civilization, and basic plumbing for days on end, only to emerge looking like a lethal, pale vampire lord of the music industry? Enter Min Yoongi, internationally known as Suga, or the aggressively raw August D, a man who has practically trademarked the exhausted genius aesthetic and turned it into an Olympic sport of visual devastation. When we talk about skipping showers, Yoongi isn't just participating. He is the undisputed king of the genius lab hibernation, where the concept of time and hygiene simply ceases to exist. Imagine the scene. It's 3 a.m. in Seoul. The air in his studio is thick with the smell of strong iced Americanos and the burning intensity of a master producer agonizing over a single snare beat. He hasn't seen the outside world in over 48 hours. His skin, naturally famous for being as translucent and white as sugar, doesn't get dull or greasy like a normal human being's would. Instead, it somehow adopts this ethereal, porcelain-like glow, contrasting violently with the dark, heavy shadows under his eyes that tell tales of sleepless nights and relentless ambition. Why does this blatant disregard for a skincare routine make millions of hearts palpitate globally? It is because when Yoongi strips away the idol makeup, the foundation, and the perfectly sprayed hair, he reveals the fiercely unapologetic soul of an underground Taegu rapper who clawed his way to the top of the global charts. Think back to the legendary D-Day solo tour or those intense documentary clips where he is wrestling with writer's block. His hair, especially during that culturally historic long hair era that practically broke the internet, is unwashed, wildly unkempt, and falling dangerously over his sharp feline eyes. He pushes it back with a frustrated sigh, exposing a bare forehead beaded with sweat, and the collective gasp from the army fandom could shift tectonic plates. We are witnessing the raw, unfiltered danger of a man completely consumed by his passion. He doesn't need the elaborate styling of a K-pop prince. His god-level beauty in these moments is entirely fueled by his raw, aggressive artistry. There's a deeply psychological grip here, the unbothered aura. Yoongi simply does not care if you see him in a stretched-out black t-shirt, sweatpants, and sandals, looking like he just rolled out of a deeply REM deprived slumber. That profound level of nonchalance is intoxicating. It screams absolute confidence. When he hits the stage, performing incredibly intense tracks like Daechwita or Hegium, the stage lights catch the real, literal sweat pouring down his face and neck. The water bottles he pours over his own head wash away any remaining product, leaving him drenched, out of breath, and looking fiercely feral. The juxtaposition of his quiet, sleepy cat-like off-stage persona with this aggressive, unwashed, adrenaline-fueled monster on stage creates a visual whiplash that leaves fans absolutely breathless. And let us not forget the profound, emotional depth of his journey. This is a man who bared his soul about his mental health, his shoulder injury, and his grueling path to success. Seeing him raw, exhausted, and skipping showers is like reading the physical diary of his struggles and triumphs. As we look toward the highly anticipated 2026 BTS reunion, where the boys will return stronger and more mature after their military service, picture the kind of rugged, stripped-back aura Yoongi will bring to the table. The military undoubtedly strips away the last remnants of soft idol grooming, leaving behind a hardened, powerfully mature man. The thought of Yoongi returning to his studio, bringing that disciplined yet fiercely independent energy, creating new masterpieces while completely ignoring his shower schedule, is enough to make any sane person lose their mind. The science of attraction often leans towards the illusion of effortlessness, and nobody embodies effortless danger quite like an unwashed Min Yoongi holding a guitar or hunched over a MIDI keyboard. You can almost smell the unique scent of vanilla, coffee, and sheer masculine grit through the screen. Look at the famous in the SOP episodes where he is tasked with cooking or building things in the scorching heat. He's wearing a bucket hat pulled low, no makeup, skin glowing with natural oils and sweat, chopping wood or grilling meat with a quiet, lethal focus. He looks like a man who could survive in the wilderness, write a Grammy-nominated album, and steal your heart all without ever touching a bar of soap. Notice the veins popping on his hands as he works, the sheer strength hidden beneath that sleepy exterior, totally unfiltered by any glamorous styling. The dichotomy is simply absurd. How can someone look so incredibly soft like a squishy dumpling you want to protect, yet simultaneously exude the dangerous, alpha male energy of a mafia boss who hasn't slept in 3 days? Then, suddenly, he cracks that famous, adorable gummy smile, and the entire rugged, unwashed facade shatters into pure, blinding warmth, proving his visual duality is completely unmatched. This is the Min Yoongi paradox. He defies the conventional rules of grooming and beauty. His god-level visual status isn't maintained by expensive serums. It is forged in the fires of his obsessive creativity, his sweat-drenched concerts, and his unapologetic authenticity. The dark circles under his eyes aren't flaws. They are medals of honor, proving his relentless dedication to his craft. The messy, unwashed hair isn't a sign of laziness. It is the physical manifestation of a mind moving 1,000,000 miles a minute, too busy creating history to worry about shampoo. It makes you ask yourself, what is the true essence of beauty? Is it the pristine, airbrushed perfection on a magazine cover? Or is it the raw, breathing, fiercely passionate reality of a man giving everything he has to his art? Yoongi forces us to confront this question and completely re-evaluate our standards. He proves that true attractiveness is deeply intertwined with purpose, intensity, and an undeniable, magnetic aura that no amount of grime can obscure. In fact, the grime only enhances it, adding a layer of gritty realism that makes him infinitely more appealing than any highly polished, manufactured idol. Even his voice, known for its deep, raspy texture, seems to gain a lower, more intoxicating gravelly tone when he skipped his morning routine, sounding like a purring engine of pure charisma. So, as we prepare to move further down this list, take a deep breath and let the terrifying reality sink in. Min Yoongi skipping a shower isn't just a lapse in hygiene. It is a calculated, devastating attack on our collective sanity, a raw display of god-level handsome that leaves no survivors. How will the next member possibly compete with this level of untamed, genius allure? Stick around, because the visual warfare is only just beginning, and the heat is about to get dangerously high. Number 5. J-Hope, the street dance king dripping golden sweat, electrifying. Are you prepared to discuss the sheer, undeniable physics of how a human body can actually look like it's radiating actual sunshine even when completely drenched in the gritty, salty byproduct of extreme physical exertion? If RM is the rugged intellect and Yoongi is the dark, exhausted genius, then Jung Hoseok, the incomparable J-Hope, is the kinetic embodiment of pure, unadulterated energy that makes a shower seem like a total downgrade. When we talk about J-Hope skipping a wash, we aren't talking about lazy Sunday mornings in bed. We're talking about the aftermath of a grueling, bone-crushing 12-hour dance practice where he pushes the boundaries of human anatomy. Close your eyes and picture the underground dance studios of Gwangju where he first earned his title as the street dance king. Smile Hoya. Fast forward to the HYBE practice rooms. The mirrors are completely fogged up from the sheer heat generated by his movements. He stops, gasping for air, leaning against the wall with his chest heaving. His hair, usually styled into a perfect, vibrant masterpiece, is now plastered to his forehead and neck, dripping actual droplets of sweat onto the floor. And yet, instead of looking like a disheveled mess, he looks like a literal god of rhythm who just descended from Mount Olympus. Why is this unwashed, sweat-soaked version of Hoseok so incredibly lethal to the human heart? Because it represents the absolute peak of his passion and the relentless, almost terrifying work ethic that serves as the backbone of BTS's legendary performances. When you strip away the bright, colorful wardrobe of Hobie, the sunshine persona, and you are left with just Hoseok wearing a soaked white t-shirt, clinging transparently to his incredibly toned chest and abs, the visual impact is paralyzing. It forces viewers to acknowledge the fierce, uncompromising man beneath the bright smile. Have you ever analyzed the sharp, architectural structure of his cheekbones and jawline? When he is fresh out of shower and wearing makeup, those features are striking. But when he is exhausted, his skin glowing with natural oils, those angles become aggressively sharp, casting deep shadows that highlight a deeply mature, hyper-masculine aura that completely shatters his cute image. Think about the iconic Hope on the Street documentary series or his historic Lollapalooza headline performance, forever known as Hobbapalooza. The sheer volume of sweat he produced on that stage could have filled a swimming pool. By the end of the set, his hair was wild, his clothes were soaked through, and he looked entirely feral, vibrating with a dark, intense energy that commanded absolute submission from a crowd of over 100,000 people. The lack of pristine grooming didn't hide his beauty. It magnified it 1,000 times over, turning him into a raw, untouchable rock star. The sweat acting as a natural lubricant, making every pop, lock, and isolation in his dancing look impossibly smooth and aggressively powerful. We are witnessing the physical manifestation of dedication. The grime on his skin is a badge of honor, a visual representation of the blood, sweat, and tears, literally, that he has poured into his craft since his pre-debut days. There's a deeply rooted psychological attraction to someone who completely loses themselves in their element, totally unbothered by how pretty they look, completely consumed by the fire of their performance. His bare face, devoid of foundation, often reveals the slight, endearing unevenness of his skin texture, a sudden reminder that despite moving like a supernatural being, he is undeniably human. This grounded reality makes his god-level status even more impressive, because it is real, tangible, and built on sheer effort, not just lucky genetics. Let's look at the emotional depth of this unwashed beauty. Hoseok is known as the bridge between the rap line and the vocal line, the emotional core of the group who takes on the heavy burden of being the dance leader. The stress and responsibility he carries are immense. Seeing him after a grueling session, skipping the immediate shower to just sit on the floor, panting, staring blankly at the mirror with his defenses completely lowered, offers a rare, intimate glimpse into the soul of a man who gives everything to his team. The raw, unfiltered exhaustion on his face is profoundly beautiful because it is honest. It strips away the pressure to always be the sunshine and allows him to just be young Hoseok, a fiercely determined artist pushed to his physical limits. As we anticipate the massive 2026 reunion, the image of a post-military Hoseok, bringing an even sharper, more disciplined, and muscular physique back to the dance floor, is frankly terrifying for anyone's sanity. Imagine the new level of raw, unwashed power he will unleash when he hits the stage with his brothers again. The military service will have only heightened his natural masculinity, and the thought of him returning to those grueling practice sessions, emerging completely drenched and aggressively handsome without a drop of makeup, is the ultimate fan fantasy. His attractiveness in this raw state is scientifically compelling. The physical exertion causes a rush of endorphins and increased blood flow, literally making his skin flush and glow with a vital, deeply attractive life force. Even the way he aggressively wipes the sweat from his brow or runs a hand through his damp, ruined hair exudes a chaotic, alpha energy that leaves fans completely helpless. He proves that true god-level aesthetics aren't found in a sterile salon. They're earned on the dance floor, birthed in the friction of movement, and highlighted by the very sweat that ordinary people try so hard to wash away. The contrast between his brilliant, blinding smile and the gritty, aggressive reality of his physical exertion creates a visual masterpiece that is uniquely J-Hope. So, the next time you see a clip of him completely wrecked after a concert, looking like he hasn't seen a shower in days, take a moment to appreciate the sheer, terrifying majesty of a man who uses exhaustion as his greatest accessory. Are you surviving this countdown so far? Because the visual temperature is only going to rise as we move to the next member. Prepare yourselves, because we are about to encounter a level of worldwide handsome that defies all logic and reason. Number 4, Jeon, the worldwide handsome, defying biology, flawless. Have you ever witnessed a biological anomaly so profound that it makes top-tier dermatologists question their entire medical degrees? Enter Kim Seokjin, the man who boldly crowned himself worldwide handsome, and then spent the next decade mathematically proving it to be an undeniable scientific fact, even when completely stripped of basic modern hygiene. When we discuss the sheer audacity of skipping showers, Jin's inclusion on this list isn't just a fan fantasy. It is a documented, televised reality that shattered our understanding of human genetics. Let us rewind the tapes to his legendary appearance on the survival show Law of the Jungle in Kota Manado. This wasn't a controlled studio environment. This was the unforgiving, grueling wilderness. For days, Jeon was deprived of running water, proper sleep, and even basic facial cleansers. He was out in the scorching sun, diving into the ocean to catch fish to feed his castmates, sweating profusely in the unbearable tropical humidity. By all logical human standards, his face should have been a disastrous canvas of breakouts, grease, and exhaustion. Instead, what did the high-definition cameras capture? His bare, unwashed skin was practically glowing with an ethereal, glass-like perfection that millions of people spend fortunes trying to replicate. His completely bare face, devoid of a single drop of BB cream, revealed a flawless complexion, thick, natural eyebrows, and those famously plump lips that somehow looked even more striking against the rugged, dirty backdrop of the jungle. How is it physically possible for a man to look like a literal deity while scraping survival out of the mud? It forces us to reflect on the immense, almost unfair genetic lottery this man has won. But the god-level beauty of Kim Seokjin when he skips a shower goes far deeper than just surface-level genetics. It is intrinsically tied to his emotional resilience and the colossal weight he carried as the eldest member since their grueling pre-debut days. Think about those early, desperate years. As a university acting student unexpectedly thrust into the relentless, hip-hop-heavy training system of Big Hit, Jeon had to work twice as hard to catch up to his naturally gifted members. Picture the freezing, dimly lit practice rooms of 2013. After the younger members had finally collapsed or gone home, Jeon would stay behind, pushing his body past its absolute breaking point. Imagine him lying flat on the cold wooden floor at 4 a.m., completely drenched in sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead, muscles trembling from exertion, too exhausted to even drag himself to the dorm showers. In that raw, unpolished state, stripped of the worldwide handsome persona, you see the real, bleeding heart of BTS. The sheer determination etched into his unwashed, tired face is a million times more captivating than any red carpet look. He wasn't just building his stamina. He was building the foundation of a brotherhood. This is the same man who, despite his own exhaustion, would stand over a hot stove in their cramped, dilapidated dorm, sweating through his clothes to cook meals for his younger brothers. Fast forward to his chaotic, legendary Eat Jeon broadcasts, and we see another facet of this unwashed allure. Imagine him after a grueling, 3-hour stadium concert, skipping the immediate shower to aggressively dig into a massive, late-night feast of his absolute favorite dishes. Picture him completely barefaced, a messy mop of damp hair falling into his eyes, sweat still glistening on his collarbone, devouring a giant, icy bowl of naengmyeon or sizzling, savory galbi. He doesn't care about looking elegant. There might be a smudge of sauce on his lip, his cheeks are stuffed like a hamster, and yet the sheer, unapologetic joy and unbothered confidence radiating from him makes him incredibly, aggressively attractive. It is the juxtaposition of his refined, aristocratic features doing the most delightfully unrefined things. We also cannot ignore the profound emotional depth of his solo journey, specifically the monumental release of The Astronaut. The bond he shares with Chris Martin of Coldplay isn't just a musical collaboration. It is a deep, mutual respect between two artists. When Jeon ran across that massive stadium stage in Buenos Aires, leaving everything he had on the stage before his impending military enlistment, the visual was breathtaking. The wind was violently messing up his hair, tears and sweat were freely mingling on his bare cheeks, and his face was flushed with the overwhelming emotion of saying a temporary goodbye to his fans. Chris Martin looked at him with such immense pride and affection, witnessing a man completely stripped of his idol armor, radiating pure, vulnerable, unwashed beauty. That performance wasn't about looking perfect. It was about being completely, devastatingly real. As we look forward to the highly anticipated 2026 BTS reunion, the gravity of Jin's role becomes even more paramount. Having completed his mandatory military service first, he has quietly absorbed the profound maturity and disciplined grit that comes from serving his country. The military undoubtedly stripped away the last remnants of soft, manufactured styling, replacing it with a hardened, formidable aura. When that 2026 stage finally lights up and the 7 members stand together once more, picture the kind of raw power Jeon will exude. The thought of him sweating through intense reunion rehearsals, emerging from the practice room completely unwashed, sporting a physically broader, more muscular physique and an intense, mature gaze, is enough to make any sane person lose their mind. He doesn't need the elaborate outfits or the heavy stage makeup. His god-level handsome status is eternally secured by his absurdly broad shoulders. The legendary Dorito physique that looks best in a simple, sweat-stained white t-shirt, and a face that simply refuses to obey the laws of aging or grime. Jeon proves that true, heart-stopping beauty is a combination of radical self-confidence, unyielding dedication, and a bone structure so perfect it practically demands to be studied by scientists. So, as we leave the unwashed majesty of the eldest brother, you must ask yourself, if the man who literally invented the concept of worldwide handsome looks this devastating without a bar of soap, how on earth are the youngest members going to escalate this visual warfare? Brace yourselves, because the Magne line is about to completely obliterate whatever sanity you have left. Number 3. Jimin, the Swan Prince forged in desperation, breathtaking. Have you ever stopped to wonder how the ethereal, delicate fairy of BTS transforms into an absolute powerhouse of raw, unadulterated danger the moment he is stripped of his flawless stage makeup and pushed to the brink of utter physical exhaustion? Park Jimin is a living, breathing paradox who completely shatters the illusion of the manicured idol the second he skips a shower. We're not talking about a simple, careless bedhead. We are diving deep into the intoxicating, aggressive allure of a man who has quite literally danced until his body gave out. Picture the intense, behind-the-scenes footage of the Black Swan or on rehearsals. The air in the room is suffocatingly thick. The mirrors are completely opaque with condensation, and Jimin is slumped against the cold glass, gasping for breath. His hair, stripped of all styling products, is drenched in sweat and pushed carelessly out of his eyes, revealing the fiercely sharp, almost predatory angle of his jawline that fans rarely see under softer lighting. This isn't the soft, smiling Machi. This is a fiercely dedicated artist radiating an intense, deeply masculine aura that hits you like a physical blow. Why is this unwashed, completely wrecked version of Jimin so magnetically devastating? Because it pulls back the curtain on one of the most emotional, gut-wrenching survival stories in K-pop history. To truly understand the god-level beauty of a sweaty, unwashed Park Jimin, you have to rewind to the grueling pre-debut era, a time filled with tears, desperation, and the agonizing uncertainty of whether he would even make the final cut. Remember the heartbreaking reality that he was almost kicked out of the lineup 8 different times? He wasn't naturally gifted in the hip-hop style they were pursuing. He was a contemporary dancer forced to completely rewire his body and his mind. Think about the sheer, terrifying willpower it took for a teenager to sleep only 2 hours a night, practicing in a freezing, dimly lit studio until the sun came up, utterly alone and drenched in his own desperate sweat. He didn't have the luxury of an elaborate skincare routine or a refreshing, warm shower. He would literally collapse on the studio floor in a puddle of his own making, his unwashed skin glowing with the terrifyingly beautiful, sheer force of his unbreakable determination. That history of blood, sweat, and unshed tears is permanently etched into his DNA and visible in every pore of his skin. When you see him today, exhausted and skipping a shower after a massive, mind-bending stadium concert, you aren't just seeing a tired superstar. You are seeing the ghost of that desperate trainee who fought with every fiber of his being to stay by his brother's sides. It is an emotional, deeply inspirational beauty that no amount of luxury cosmetics, designer clothes, or expensive lighting could ever replicate. His bare skin, often flushed a deep, natural crimson from intense cardiovascular exertion, radiates a vibrant, pulsating life force that makes standard idol paleness look almost ghostly in comparison. The sheer volume of sweat acts as a natural, luminous gloss, highlighting the striking contrast between his famously plush, naturally rosy lips and the sudden, aggressive hollowness of his exhausted cheeks. Let's take a moment to talk about the mesmerizing duality of his physical form. Underneath the oversized, sweat-soaked vintage t-shirts he usually wears during these grueling sessions lies a physique sculpted not in a vanity gym for mere aesthetics, but through thousands of hours of punishing, high-impact, bone-rattling choreography. When that damp fabric clings stubbornly to his chest and his impossibly narrow waist, the visual is nothing short of a classical Renaissance sculpture brought to a modern, gritty, breathing life. Now, fast forward your imagination to the highly anticipated, wildly chaotic BTS reunion in 2026. The military service will have completely stripped away the last vestiges of his soft, polished idol image, replacing it with a hardened, fiercely mature discipline and a physical bulk that will leave the fandom entirely speechless. Picture the absolute, unfiltered madness when the seven of them finally get back together in the HYBE practice rooms to prepare for their massive comeback. Imagine the sheer, competitive chaos of them trying to outdance each other, bickering hilariously about who got rusty during their enlistment, laughing, yelling, and pushing their bodies back to the absolute limit. Jimin, naturally fiercely competitive and a chronic perfectionist, will undoubtedly go the hardest, refusing to take a break until every angle is flawless. He will emerge from those historic reunion practices completely drenched, his hair a wild, untamed mess, totally unwashed, and radiating a dangerous, grown man aura that will completely short-circuit the entire internet. Imagine the deeply comforting, hilarious, and chaotic scenes that follow those brutal, unwashed sessions. Instead of rushing to clean up and maintain their visuals, they immediately order a massive, ridiculously large feast to the practice room. Picture a totally barefaced, sweaty Jimin aggressively digging into a giant, steaming portion of his absolute favorite spicy pork belly, or fiercely slurping down a rich, savory bowl of kimchi jjigae right there on the practice room floor, maybe even arguing playfully with Jungkook over the last piece of meat. He doesn't care about the grease on his fingers, the messy state of his clothes, or the sweat dripping down his neck. The sheer, unbothered joy of eating his favorite comfort food, surrounded by his brothers, after giving his absolute all, is a profoundly attractive sight. It grounds him entirely. It takes the untouchable, ethereal global icon who sits at the top of the Billboard charts and turns him into a deeply relatable, fiercely loyal man who finds ultimate comfort in a hot, messy meal and the raucous company of his chosen family. The science of human attraction tells us that we are deeply drawn to vulnerability, authenticity, and raw, unfiltered passion, and absolutely nobody embodies that quite like Park Jimin in the immediate, unwashed aftermath of a legendary performance. Even his voice, which is naturally high, sweet, and incredibly melodic, drops to a deeply hypnotic, raspy, gravelly whisper when he is utterly exhausted, sending violent shivers down the spines of millions of listeners. He proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that true God-level handsome isn't about avoiding the dirt, the pain, and the grime. It is about diving headfirst into the fire, completely surrendering to the art, and emerging on the other side wearing your utter exhaustion like a crown of absolute glory. So, if the angelic main dancer can look this dangerously, illegally alluring without a single drop of water or soap, how on earth will you survive the devastating visual impact of the final two members waiting on this list? Keep breathing, hold onto your screens, and brace your hearts, because the visual heat is about to reach an entirely new, unprecedented level of absolute destruction. Number 2. V, the classic masterpiece redefining gravity, surreal. Have you ever looked at a museum painting, an ancient, carefully preserved sculpture, and thought, this is breathtaking, but what if it could sweat? Enter Kim Tae-yoon, widely known as V, the man who possesses a face so mathematically symmetrical and classically striking that it regularly breaks international beauty ranking systems. When we discuss the concept of skipping showers, we are entering truly dangerous territory with Tae-yoon. Why? Because while a lack of grooming makes ordinary humans look disheveled, it simply transforms V from an untouchable, high-fashion prince into a gritty, devastatingly real protagonist of an indie film. The sheer, terrifying reality is that Kim Tae-yoon does not need styling to look god-level handsome. The styling actually holds him back. Imagine the raw footage from their chaotic in the SOP vacations. It's early morning, the sun is just hitting the lake, and Tae-yoon stumbles out of his cabin. He hasn't seen a comb, let alone a shower. His notoriously thick, wavy hair, often jokingly referred to as a bird's nest, is sticking out in impossible directions, defying every known law of gravity. Yet beneath that chaotic mop of hair, his bare face is completely astonishing. Without the heavy stage makeup or the meticulously drawn eyeliner, his incredibly deep, soulful eyes, one monolid and one double eyelid, a biological masterpiece, become the absolute focal point, radiating a sleepy, heavy-lidded magnetism that is deeply intoxicating. The slight shadow of a morning beard, which he loves to show off on random, unannounced Instagram stories, much to the company's dismay, doesn't look unkempt. It looks ruggedly masculine, completely shattering the pristine idol image and revealing the deeply artistic bohemian soul beneath. How is it physically possible for a man to look like a literal, walking piece of classic art, while simultaneously looking like he just rolled out of a deeply REM-deprived slumber? It forces us to realize that Taeyoon's beauty isn't a product of the K-pop machine. It is a raw, undeniable force of nature. Think about the iconic, sweat-drenched moments during the Singularity or Stigma performances. By the end of his solo stages, the meticulous styling is completely ruined. He is soaked, panting heavily, and the stage lights catch the real, literal sweat dripping from his sharp jawline. In those moments, he is stripped of the polite, soft-spoken persona and becomes a dangerous, magnetic force. The unwashed, sweaty reality of his performance completely elevates the visual, making it fiercely intimate and deeply emotional. It is the juxtaposition of his incredibly deep, husky, baritone voice, which somehow gets even lower and raspier when he is exhausted, paired with a face that looks like it was sculpted by Michelangelo himself. But to truly grasp the depth of his unwashed allure, we must look at his emotional journey and his pre-debut struggles. The famous story of Taeyoon being the hidden member, kept completely a secret from the public while the others were building a fan base, is heartbreaking. Imagine the psychological toll of practicing just as hard, sweating just as much in those freezing, dimly lit practice rooms, and collapsing on the same cold floor completely unwashed and exhausted, but without the promise of recognition. Those early days forged a deeply resilient, fiercely loyal man. When you see him today, exhausted and skipping a shower, you are seeing the culmination of that quiet, agonizing endurance. His bare face isn't just physically stunning. It carries the weight of those hidden years, adding a profound, melancholic depth to his god-level visuals. Now, project your imagination to the highly anticipated 2026 BTS reunion. Having completed his intense military service in the Special Duty Team, SDT, the most grueling and physically demanding unit, Taeyoon will return fundamentally changed. The military will have entirely stripped away the soft, high-fashion styling, replacing it with a hardened, formidable, and physically massive physique. Imagine the absolute chaos when he returns to the practice room for their comeback. The thought of him sweating through intense choreography, emerging completely unwashed, sporting his new, broader shoulders, and that intense military-trained discipline, is enough to make any sane person completely lose their mind. He doesn't need the elaborate outfits. His god-level status is secured by a bone structure so perfect it demands scientific study, and an unapologetic, chaotic energy that refuses to be tamed by a bar of soap. Picture the deeply comforting, hilarious scenes that will follow those brutal, unwashed reunion practices. Imagine a completely barefaced, sweaty Taeyong, perhaps still wearing a damp, oversized t-shirt, excitedly digging into a massive bowl of his favorite japchae, or fiercely demanding a plate of greasy, sweet and sour pork, completely ignoring the fact that he looks like a glorious mess. He doesn't care about looking elegant. The sheer, unbothered joy of eating his favorite comfort food, surrounded by his brothers, is a profoundly attractive sight. It grounds him entirely. It takes the untouchable, ethereal global icon and turns him into a deeply relatable, fiercely loyal man who finds ultimate comfort in a hot, messy meal and the raucous company of his chosen family. He proves that true, God-level handsome isn't about avoiding the dirt, the sweat, and the grime. It is about completely surrendering to the chaotic beauty of real life. So, as we prepare for the final entry on this list, take a deep breath. If the man with the most mathematically perfect face in the world looks this devastating without a single drop of water, how on earth are we going to survive the sheer, unadulterated power of the Golden Magne? Brace yourselves, because the final visual attack is about to completely obliterate whatever sanity you have left. Number 1. Jungkook, the Golden Magne, emitting raw alpha dominance, unstoppable. Has there ever been a more terrifyingly perfect specimen of human evolution than Jungkook? We have finally reached the summit of our god-level countdown, and sitting at the absolute pinnacle is the Golden Magne, a man who treats physical exhaustion like a casual hobby and uses his own sweat as a personal million-dollar highlighter. When we talk about skipping showers, Jungkook doesn't just participate. He practically lives in a perpetual state of post-workout, adrenaline-fueled grime that somehow makes him look like an untouchable action movie protagonist. Picture the sheer, unadulterated chaos of his legendary Weverse live streams. It is 4 a.m., he has been boxing for hours, his hair is tangled, damp mops sticking in every possible direction, and he is sitting in his living room wearing a sleeveless black shirt that does absolutely nothing to hide his heavily tattooed, wildly muscular arms. He hasn't seen a drop of soap, yet he casually leans into the camera, entirely barefaced, his skin glowing with the terrifyingly vibrant flush of pure youth and extreme cardiovascular health. How is it scientifically possible that a man falling asleep in front of millions of people, drooling slightly, completely unwashed, causes a global meltdown that literally crashes servers? It is because Jungkook completely obliterates the line between the polished global pop star and the fiercely independent, wildly untamed young man who refuses to be boxed in by industry standards. Let us deeply analyze the sheer physical anomaly of his unwashed state. Unlike mere mortals whose skin becomes dull and greasy without a 10-step routine, Jungkook's bare face reveals the faint, adorable scars on his cheek, the natural asymmetry of his large, doe-like eyes, and the aggressive, sharp angle of his jawline that has only grown more lethal with age. Think about in the SOP episodes where he wakes up, hair completely defying gravity, and immediately starts hitting a punching bag in the sweltering heat before even thinking about brushing his teeth. The sweat violently dripping down his neck, soaking his shirt, tracing the intricate ink on his skin. It creates a visual masterpiece of raw, unfiltered masculinity that leaves viewers completely breathless. But the true, emotional gravity of his god-level beauty lies in the devastating story of his youth. This is the boy who left his home in Busan at just 15 years old, a painfully shy teenager who would wait until the older members fell asleep just to take a shower because he was too timid. He surrendered his entire adolescence to the grueling, punishing training system of Big Hit, allowing himself to be raised, molded, and protected by his 6 older brothers. The sheer volume of blood, sweat, and tears he poured into those freezing practice rooms is incomprehensible. Every drop of sweat you see on his face during a grueling 3-hour stadium concert is a physical manifestation of his desperate, unbreakable vow to never let his brothers or his fans down. When he stands on that massive stage, completely drenched, his hair ruined, gasping for air with a wild, feral look in his eyes, you aren't just seeing a handsome idol. You are witnessing a fiercely loyal warrior who literally leaves his heart and soul on the floor. Now, fast forward your mind to the explosive, earth-shattering reality of the 2026 BTS reunion. Jungkook, having completed his military service, will return as an absolute titan. The military training will have stripped away any remaining trace of boyish softness, forging him into a heavily disciplined, physically massive powerhouse. Imagine the terrifyingly beautiful chaos of their first reunion practice. Jungkook, ever the perfectionist, will push himself to the absolute brink, dancing until his muscles scream, determined to show that the golden magne has only grown stronger. Picture him emerging from that studio, totally unwashed, a damp towel draped over his incredibly broad shoulders, exuding an intense, grown man aura that will completely short-circuit the internet. The sheer, predatory confidence of a fully realized Jungkook returning to claim his throne is a thought that should come with a health warning. And what happens after this brutal, sweaty session? In true Jungkook fashion, he won't rush to a luxury spa. Instead, picture him in his kitchen or the dorms, completely barefaced and still radiating the heat of his workout, whipping up a massive, late-night feast. We all know his absolute obsession with food, and there is nothing more intoxicating than seeing a sweaty, unbothered Jungkook aggressively mixing up his legendary, chaotic recipe for buldak mayo makuksu, or fiercely grilling a massive, sizzling slab of pork belly. The sheer joy on his unwashed face as he takes a massive, ungraceful bite, perhaps with a little sauce smudged on his chin, completely ignoring the fact that he looks like a glorious, sweaty mess, is profoundly endearing. It grounds his god-like status into a fiercely relatable reality. It shows a man who finds his ultimate comfort not in pristine perfection, but in the raw, messy, and intensely passionate pursuit of what he loves, whether it is music, boxing, or a perfectly cooked late-night meal. Think about the global dominance of his solo era with Seven and Standing Next to You, where he fully embraced a grittier, more mature pop star persona. That wasn't just a concept. It was an evolution of the man who genuinely looks his absolute best when he is pushed to the limit, exhausted, and dripping in the physical evidence of his hard work. Have you noticed how his piercing gaze becomes even more intense when his bangs are matted to his forehead with sweat? It is a look of pure, unyielding dominance. He doesn't need to try to be attractive. His attractiveness is a byproduct of his relentless, fiery passion for life. When you combine the heavy, intimidating tattoos that cover his right arm, the multiple piercings, and the battle-scarred, completely unwashed exhaustion of a man who just gave 110% to his performance, you get a visual cocktail that is scientifically proven to be fatal to the human heart. His unwashed beauty is a massive rebellion against the artificial nature of the entertainment industry. It is a loud, unapologetic declaration that true perfection is found in the dirt, the grind, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. Even his voice, that angelic, crystal-clear tenor that can hit impossible high notes with absolute ease, takes on a dangerously husky, breathless, and raspy edge when he is physically exhausted, acting as an auditory weapon that completely paralyzes the listener. Jungkook proves that you do not need expensive styling, a team of makeup artists, perfect studio lighting, or even a basic bar of soap to conquer the entire world. You just need an unbreakable spirit, a heart full of untamed fire, and a face that literally defies every single known law of human biology. He is the ultimate proof, the undisputed king of raw, unwashed, God-level handsome, and the perfect, devastating conclusion to this explosive visual journey. Have you survived this countdown, or has the sheer, unadulterated power of these 7 men completely rewritten your understanding of beauty? Can you even comprehend the sheer magnitude of the visual earthquake that will hit the globe when all 7 of these unwashed, breathtakingly perfect men stand together once again on the reunion stage in 2026? Until then, keep streaming, keep breathing, and never forget that true beauty shines the brightest when the cameras are off and the sweat is real.